Alright, so now that we have a Ubuntu installation to work with, now we're going to install Ruby on Rails, which the process is much different than the Windows installation. This is a little more complicated. You have to do it through the command line, but once you get the hang of it, once you learn a couple commands on the command line, it's really not that scary as it may seem. So we're actually going to use a guide as a reference. This guide is how to install Ruby on Rails onto Ubuntu 12.4, which we have 12.10, but it will basically be the same thing. And there's a bunch of different ways to install Ruby on Rails on Linux. We're going to be using something called RVM, which stands for Ruby Version Manager. It just allows us to install it and gives us a set of commands to work with to install it. So we're going to do that. And so you want to open your command line. It's actually called a terminal in Linux, and we're just going to use the default terminal. Don't get scared. It puts us in our home directory by default, which is, I can show you if I go to, hold on a second, the home folder. Now we are in this folder in the command line. ls, which lists everything, files and folders, is a extremely important command to know. And you'll see it lists, what it does is just lists everything that's in our home directory. We can change directory with cd. So if we say cd downloads, it switches us to the downloads directory, which is here. Okay, and if we say list the files, nothing shows up because there's nothing in the directory. Let me see. So you'll see the example. Whoop. What happened? This examples folder does have something in it. So and to go back to the home directory or back wherever you were, it's just cd space and then 2 dots. So now we're back. So if we go to cd, actually that examples, that's a shortcut. That's not an actual folder. Should be the same thing though. Whoop. Oh, and if you want to go to your last command, you just click the up button, the up key. It'll take you through what you've already done. And that's not a directory, it's a shortcut. You can see if we go in the GUI, when I say GUI, it's GUI, which stands for Graphical User Interface. And you'll see the examples folder has an arrow. It's a shortcut, so we can't just treat it like a regular folder. But you don't really need, you do need to know basic commands like how you list the files and change directories. But for the most part, we're not going to be doing much more aside from using RVM and using apt-get. You'll see here the first command we need to call is apt-get update. And what apt-get is, it's a powerful tool. It stands for Advanced Packaging Tool, and you can use it to download software from the repository, update, remove, pretty much anything. So what we're going to do here is just update our package, the apt-get, everything that it offers from the repository, all the software from that one small command. Okay, and what sudo means is if we're going to do anything that requires root access, where we need something that the file or folder or whatever the command requires root access, by default we have this user called Brad or whatever you put in for your name, which isn't the root user. So if we want to do any kind of root actions or commands, we have to put this sudo in front of it, and it will ask us for our password. So if we do sudo apt-get and then update, Actually, let me try it without the sudo first. So you'll see it says could not open locked file, permissions denied. But if we go back and we put sudo, and it will ask us for our password. Shoot. It doesn't show you any asterisks like a normal password would. So it's just going through the repository and just updating anything that is out of date. Alright, so it looks like it went pretty quick. So the next thing we want to do is we want to install curl. And what curl is it's just it's a client that gets files and folders from servers using protocols like FTP, HTTP. You don't really need to know exactly what it does, just know that you need it. So we're just going to do another, this time we're going to use the install command for apt-get. So we want to do sudo apt-get install curl. And we want to do yes. Alright, so now we have curl installed. The next thing we want to do is we want to download the RVM package. So we're going to use curl here, and I'm going to use the L option. Actually, I can just copy and paste this. I don't know why I'm typing. Hold on a second here. Copy, paste. Alright, so that should do it. Okay, so now RVM is installed. We have to exit our shell or terminal or command line, whatever you want to call it, and then go back in. Alright, so now RVM has its own dependencies that we need to install. So let's check it out by doing requirements. Requirements. So if we click up, push up, it'll take us to our last command. Alright, just tells us about what else we need in order to run RVM, which is all right here for Ruby. So what I'm going to do is just copy all these. Well, this is what it shows us in the text. So this is right here. So what we want to do is install all these dependencies. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. I don't want to type all that. Alright, so what this is doing is it's doing another apt-get install, and all these are separate dependencies, or it's just separate software that we need in order to run RVM in Ruby. So that'll ask you again. Oh, I keep using the wrong password here. So you just want to click yes for any questions it asks. So after this is done and all set, we'll be able to install Ruby. Okay, Ruby is the programming language that Ruby on Rails uses. I'm going to have an entire chapter dedicated to what Ruby is and basic programming using Ruby. And once we install Ruby, we can install Ruby gems, which I'll also explain Ruby gems. They're basically little sections of code that we can integrate into Rails. Rails itself is actually a gem. So that's why we need to install Ruby gems first and then install Rails, because it is a gem. So Now if we go over here, it looks like everything went well. So now we want to install Ruby. So we're just going to do rvm install. And the latest version of Ruby is 1.9.3. So So that's all set. Next we want to install Ruby Gems, which we just want to do rvm. We want to do rvm Ruby Gems, and we want the most current version. We need sudo rvm Ruby Gems. What's going on here? Don't need sudo. Ruby was not found. We just installed Ruby, didn't we? Install Ruby 1.93. Oh. Install 1.93. Okay, alright. Let's use it. Ruby is not a rvm is not a function. Will not work. You need to change your preferences to allow login shell. Sometimes it's not required. Please visit for an example. What? One second, guys. It says I need to allow login shell. Run command as a login shell. Let's try that. Alright. Let's try that again. Alright, I'm going to pause the video again, see what's going on. Alright, so it looks like I did do the right thing. I clicked the run command as login shell, but I think we have to go back into it, exit and go back in. So let's try that again. Alright, so now we're using RVM, we're using Ruby. Now we can install the gems. Sorry about that. So we want to do RVM, then Ruby Gems, because Gems is now installed. Ruby's now installed. And we want the current version. And next we just what's going on? Alright, so installation of Ruby Gems is successful. So now we just want to install Rails, and we should be all set. In theory. And this could take a while, so I'm just going to pause it. Alright, so everything went good, everything was installed. So you just want to check by just typing Rails and then V. And this says we have 3.2.12, which is the latest version. And then you can also type Ruby. Make sure you have Ruby, which is 1.9.3. So Ruby, Rails, and all its components are now installed.